Merry Christmas to all, and I spiked all your eggnog. What the hell was that? He was Santa. Who dresses as Santa? Because he doesn't look like Santa. And flies a Volkswagen. After selling umbrellas. For money. Santa sells umbrellas for money. But he has reindeer. We at least got that part right about him. You know, seeing how we pretty much got every other conceivable thing about him wrong. But hey, at least Christmas with the Cranks set us straight. Proving once again that they have an unbelievable understanding of everything Christmas. It's so stupid, it's so stupid, it's so stupid, it's so stupid! Huh. Gotta have this exploding problem looked at. And that was my 8-minute review of The Last Airbender. I'm sorry the wall was the wrong color, but hey, at least it's not as bad as a bad credit card! I'll kill you! I'll kill you! I'll kill you! What the hell are you doing? I did it. I did a traditional Nostalgia Critic review with no visuals, no cutaways, just me in front of a white wall. Well, what'd you do with Malcolm and Tim? Oh, I put them to good use. Okay, get the hell out of here! You're exactly like this movie! You think that never changing and just repeating the same traditions over and over is somehow what's most important? Well, I'm about to show you. I just posted this on the internet, and I'm gonna prove that people like to see the exact same formula over and over. And soon you're gonna have to change that wall to an off-white. Off-white! Yeah, well, I'm embarrassed you were ever a part of me. I'm gonna wrap up this review telling the world that. Haha, here we go! But barely anybody's watching it. Nobody cares that this is like one of the old reviews. Yeah, well, there you go, idiot. And the comments, they're not positive at all. Gosh, it's almost like the majority of online comments are usually negative.
Look, you're still pretty new to this, but there's a saying that most of us know.
Yeah, you never read the comments.
But that's why I did it. To make them laugh. I figure maybe if I can make them laugh, I could finally get them to like me. That's the whole reason I started doing this. Hey, loser, where's Patty Mayonnaise?
Hey, Spielberg, what's the name of your next movie? Attack of the 50-Foot Forehead?
I was thinking maybe if you weren't doing anything this Friday night, maybe we could hang out.
Ew, gross.
I just thought this would change everything, you know?
We're not who we were. We change. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, but we all change. Movies like this don't want us to change. They try to shame those who do things their own way. They act like the importance is in the details and not in the overall message. This is a horrible thing to teach, especially when talking about Christmas.
What? Since we talked, I'm feeling swell.
But we shouldn't be ashamed of our past, nor should we glorify it. It's like anything, there's positives and negatives. There's good moments in bad times, and there's bad moments in good times. Because of this, traditions can be hard to figure out too. Sometimes we obsess over things when we don't need to. Other times we try something new when we probably should have left good enough alone. But in between one foot in the past and one in the future lies what matters most. The choices we make now are what always has and always will define who we are. So this Christmas, when you're remembering to be kind and understanding of others, remember to be kind and understanding of yourself. And those moments you remember as being embarrassing, you may find are not only the most precious moments, but often the most important. And sometimes should be looked at with more appreciation than you think. We're always going to get angry at ourselves, but as long as you always try to learn and get better, you'll find it doesn't last that long. And trust me when I say, you're definitely worth the time. I'm the Nostalgia Critic. This movie can suck.
Don't touch me! You gave me a seizure!
You barely put us in the review.
Oh yeah, he made that a lot better!
Hey, it's not easy being a table.
It's not easy being unconscious. You know how hard it is to balance a camera on top of your head?
Oh, good for you!
I'm a 35-year-old man, and for most of my life I thought my mother Carol was the kind of person who believed deeply in fairness. She repeated it often enough. When my siblings and I were kids, she'd say things like, "No favorites in this house," usually while dividing up slices of cake or wrapping gifts the same size for each of us. That message carried into adulthood, especially after she became a grandmother. Every holiday, she'd tell people she treated all her grandkids exactly the same. My daughter Lily is 8. She's kind, curious, and the kind of child who notices small things, like when someone gets an extra scoop of ice cream. My brother Ryan has a son named Ethan, who's 9, and my sister Amanda has a son named Max, who's 7. The 3 cousins grew up close, and Carol loved reminding everyone how proud she was to have 3 grandchildren so close in age. She hosted what she called Grandkid Days every few months, saying it was her way of keeping family traditions alive. At first, it all looked even, but little differences started showing up that were easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. Ethan's birthday surprises always seemed a little bigger. Max got the first pick of anything new, and Lily often ended up with the leftover piece or the smaller version. Once, when Carol redecorated the guest room for the grandkids, she made a big deal about how they'd each have their own space. Ethan's side had new furniture and his name painted on the wall. Max got a new bookshelf. Lily's corner had an old toy chest from the attic and a faded blanket that used to be mine. I brushed it off, thinking she was just recycling what she had around. Carol always had excuses ready when things looked uneven. Ethan's birthday came first. Lily doesn't need as much. It balances out. I wanted to believe her. Then Carol's 60th birthday came up, and she went on and on about a special surprise for the grandkids. She said it would be something they'd remember forever. The way she hyped it up, everyone was curious. She booked a dinner at a restaurant downtown and told all of us to dress nicely because she wanted a family photo afterward. That evening, she was glowing, new haircut, shiny earrings, the works. After dinner, she clinked her glass and announced she had news. She was planning what she called a cousin's trip. A few days at a mountain resort so the grandkids could bond and make memories. Everyone clapped. Lily's face lit up. Then Carol added, almost as an afterthought, Lily might be a little young for such a long trip, so she can stay home with Daniel. The table went silent. Ethan grinned at the idea of a trip. Max bounced in his seat. Amanda gave a quick, uneasy smile, like she wasn't sure what to do. Ryan cleared his throat. Even Carol seemed to realize how flat the moment had gone. She tried to fix it by saying, maybe next time when she's a bit older. Lily looked up at her and asked if she had done something wrong. Carol reached over and patted her hand, saying no, but her tone was final. The subject changed quickly after that, but the energy at the table never recovered. When Carol handed out the printed itinerary a few minutes later, I noticed Lily's name wasn't anywhere. The resort booking listed Ethan and Max as guests of Carol. I asked about it quietly after dinner, thinking maybe it was a mistake. She said it was just simpler that way, since Lily wouldn't be going. I pointed out that Lily had gone camping last summer without any issue. Carol just shrugged and said mountain trips were different, that Lily gets bored easily. That night, when we got home, Lily asked if she could see the pictures from the restaurant again. She noticed the paper on the table with Ethan and Max's names, and asked where hers was. I told her grandma had planned something just for the boys this time. She went quiet and walked to her room. A while later, I saw her packing her small backpack with a few toys and a drawing pad. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was getting ready in case Grandma changed her mind. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. Carol had planned the whole thing weeks ago. Amanda later confirmed it when I called to check. The resort booking had been paid in full, and the confirmation emails mentioned only Ethan and Max. Amanda said she didn't like it either, but didn't want to upset Mom right before her birthday. Ryan said about the same. He didn't agree, but didn't want to argue. The pattern was familiar. Carol made decisions, and everyone adjusted around them. I had done it too for years. But watching Lily fold her clothes into a backpack she'd never need, I couldn't pretend this was harmless anymore. The next morning, Lily told me Ethan had mentioned the trip at school, teasing her that she wasn't old enough. She asked if Grandma knew he'd said that. I told her not to worry about it and promised to plan something fun for us that weekend. But the question stayed with me. How many times had Lily noticed small slights that I'd ignored? I started writing things down. Not to start a fight, but because I wanted to see the full picture laid out. The Christmas when Ethan got a bike and Lily got an art set half the price. The Easter baskets that were customized but somehow always tilted in the boys' favor. The way Carol described the grandkids when talking to others, the boys and then, after a pause, and Lily. By the end of the week, the notes filled a few pages. Each one seemed small on its own, but together they told a clear story. It wasn't about one trip or one toy. It was a pattern, one that Lily was beginning to understand faster than any child should have to. I decided I wouldn't confront Carol right away. I wanted facts, not emotion, but I knew the next time something like this happened, I'd be ready to make sure the rest of the family saw it too. The morning after Carol's dinner announcement, I called Ryan first. He sounded tired, like he already knew why I was calling. He admitted the trip had been planned for weeks, booked under Carol's name, with only Ethan and Max listed on the confirmation. He didn't argue or defend her, just said he didn't want to get in the middle of things. Amanda picked up next, saying she felt awkward too but didn't want to ruin Mom's excitement. Both of them acted like it was too late to change anything. That afternoon, Lily came home from school with puffy eyes. She said Ethan had told her she wasn't coming on the trip because Grandma said it was for the big kids. She asked if she'd done something wrong again. I told her we'd planned something special of our own, maybe a weekend at the lake, and she brightened a little, but the question still hung there. Later that evening, I drove to Carol's house. The porch light was on and her car was parked in the same spot as always. She greeted me like everything was fine. Started talking about the resort itinerary and what a great bonding experience it would be. I asked straight out why Lily wasn't invited. Carol smiled tightly and said the trip would be too long for her, and that the boys were more adventurous. I reminded her that Lily had gone camping last summer, slept in a tent, hiked trails, and never once complained. Carol waved it off, saying mountain trips were a different kind of energy. She poured coffee for herself and went on about how she didn't mean anything by it, how she'd make it up to Lily another time. I told her the problem wasn't about making it up, it was about keeping her word about treating the kids equally. She went quiet and stared at the table before saying she knew her grandchildren best. I told her I was going to skip her birthday celebration if Lily wasn't part of this trip. That was when her tone shifted. She said I was making a scene and using Lily to punish her. I didn't argue back, just left. The next day, Ryan called saying Mom was upset and wanted me to apologize. I asked if he thought she'd done anything wrong. He hesitated, then said maybe, but she didn't mean it like that. I told him I wasn't interested in debating what she meant. I was looking at what she did. He sighed and said he didn't want another family argument. That weekend, Carol took Ethan and Max shopping for the trip. Amanda sent a photo to the family group chat, Carol holding up matching hiking jackets for the boys. I scrolled past it. Lily and I spent the day at the park, flying kites and eating ice cream. She kept asking how long the mountain drive would take, and if Grandma would bring back pictures. I said she probably would, and Lily said maybe next time she'd be old enough. That night, I sat down and started organizing everything I'd noticed. I made a folder on my computer and labeled it Pattern. I uploaded photos of family events where the imbalance showed, birthdays, holidays, outings. I added screenshots from group messages and notes from past years. The more I added, the clearer the pattern became. Carol wasn't forgetting Lily. She was deciding what counted as fair based on her own preferences. A few days later, Ryan dropped by after work to pick up some tools he'd borrowed. He mentioned Mom had been talking about me, saying I was overreacting and that I didn't understand how tiring it is to manage 3 grandkids. He laughed like it was a harmless joke, but I could tell he felt uneasy. Before leaving, he said he'd talk to her, though I didn't expect much to change. The next morning, Carol called. She said she wanted to drop off a little something for Lily before the trip. She arrived, holding a shopping bag and a smile that looked rehearsed. Inside the bag was a pink sweater with a tag that said on sale. She told Lily it was for when she missed everyone on the trip. Lily thanked her politely, then asked if Grandma could take her next time. Carol said maybe when she's older, then turned to me and said she hoped this gift proved she meant no harm. After she left, I folded the sweater and placed it in Lily's dresser. It wasn't about the gift, it was about the message behind it. A few days before the trip, Carol sent another group message with a packing list: snacks, swimsuits, hiking shoes, addressed to the boys. I replied, asking if Lily's name had been left out by mistake. Hours later, Carol wrote back saying she'd planned something different but special for Lily, and that I shouldn't worry. Amanda messaged me privately, apologizing again, saying she felt stuck because Mom had already paid for everything. She admitted she'd tried to suggest adding Lily, but was told it was too late. By then, it was clear nothing was going to change. Carol would take the boys to the resort, and Lily would stay home. The night before the trip, Lily drew a picture of Grandma's house with everyone waving from the car. She drew herself standing by the window with her backpack on. She told me she'd show Grandma when she came back. The next morning, we watched from the front porch as Carol's SUV rolled past our driveway, suitcases strapped to the roof, Ethan and Max waving out the window. Lily waved back until the car disappeared. Then she went inside, grabbed her stuffed bunny, and asked if we could still go to the lake like I'd promised. We spent the weekend making pancakes, building a tent in the living room, and feeding ducks at the lake. While Lily slept that night, I went through the folder on my computer again, adding the latest messages and photos. It wasn't about revenge or proving a point. It was about making sure that next time, when Carol claimed she treated everyone the same, I'd have the truth lined up in front of me. Neat, undeniable, and impossible to dismiss. Carol's trip updates started coming in before the weekend was over. Group messages filled with pictures of mountain trails, matching hats, and the boys posing next to her at dinner. The captions read things like "my favorite little men" and "so proud of these 2 adventurers." Lily wasn't mentioned once, Amanda sent me a private message saying Lily had asked several times when her turn was coming, and Carol had brushed her off every time. I decided to meet Carol again, but this time I came prepared. I printed a few pictures and copied the messages I had collected. When I stopped by, she greeted me warmly as if nothing was wrong, showing me a souvenir magnet from the resort. I placed the papers on the table and told her this wasn't about feelings, it was about patterns. Her smile faded. She scanned through the pages, then said I was making a big deal out of nothing. When she started insisting that Ethan just worked harder and deserved extra rewards, I called Ryan on speaker so she couldn't twist it later. Ryan sounded uncomfortable, but admitted he had never asked for the extra gifts. Carol's voice changed instantly, accusing us of ganging up on her. Ryan said quietly that everyone could see Lily was treated differently. He hung up after that, saying he didn't want to argue, but his short sentence was enough. Carol looked rattled and said she was done talking. I gathered the papers and left. 2 days later, she showed up at my door with a gift bag. Lily ran to greet her, and Carol handed her a bracelet with tiny flowers on it. She called it a special peace present. Lily thanked her, then asked if Grandma would take her to the mountains next time. Carol hesitated, smiled tightly, and said maybe when she's older. Then she left quickly. Lily held the bracelet like it was made of glass. She didn't say much the rest of the night. By midweek, Carol started posting about new memories with the grandkids again. Ryan stayed silent in the group chat, and Amanda messaged me that she was getting uncomfortable with how Mom talked about the boys like Lily didn't exist. That's when I started reaching out to relatives. My aunt confirmed she'd noticed the same thing years ago when Lily was just a toddler. Another cousin said Carol used to brag about having 2 little boys who will carry the family name, which I had never heard before. I began collecting those details too. A few days later, Carol called and asked if I planned to come to her house for Sunday dinner. I said yes. She seemed relieved, probably thinking things were smoothing over. I arrived early and noticed the living room table had new framed photos. Ethan and Max from the trip. Lily's picture, which used to be there, had been moved to a side shelf near the hallway. Carol acted surprised when I mentioned it, saying she had just rearranged for space. During dinner, I stayed quiet and listened. She spent the evening talking about how brave the boys were on the mountain trail and how they bonded with nature. Lily's name didn't come up once. After we left, Amanda called. She said Mom had been showing people the resort pictures, telling them Lily preferred to stay home. Amanda said she corrected her in front of everyone. Carol apparently didn't take it well. She told Amanda she was brainwashed by Daniel's sensitivity. That was when Amanda decided to share screenshots of their conversation with me. It was the first time she'd taken an open stand. A few days later, Carol sent me a long message filled with excuses, claims about energy levels and temperament differences. I didn't respond. I just added it to the folder. That same week, Ryan dropped by again, saying Mom was upset that no one was defending her anymore. He admitted he was tired of being stuck in the middle, and that even Ethan had started asking why Grandma never took Lily anywhere. Ryan looked embarrassed saying it, but I could tell it bothered him more than he let on. At the end of the month, Carol invited everyone to a family movie night. She wrote the message like it was for all the grandkids, but mentioned the boys again when describing the snacks and movie choice. Amanda pointed it out in the chat. Carol quickly edited her message to include Lily's name, pretending it was a typing error. Amanda didn't reply, but Ryan reacted with a thumbs-up emoji that felt more like surrender than support. The following weekend, Carol invited Lily over alone for an afternoon visit. I agreed, thinking maybe it was a small step forward. When I picked Lily up afterward, she showed me a drawing she'd made at Grandma's house. It was of Carol sitting with Ethan and Max on one side of a picnic table, and Lily sitting on the other. Carol had apparently framed it and told her it was a sweet family picture. That night, Lily put the drawing on her desk and said Grandma told her next time she could help take pictures. I asked if she had fun. She nodded but didn't look up from the drawing. When I checked my phone later, I noticed Carol had posted that same picture on her social media with the caption, "My 3 blessings." The drawing made it look like everything was equal, but it wasn't. It was the perfect picture for her to show people who didn't know what was actually happening. I saved a screenshot, added it to the folder, and decided that from now on, every single thing would be documented. No more subtle comments or emotional talks that went nowhere. If fairness couldn't exist on its own, I'd make sure the truth stood in plain sight, cold, clear, and recorded. When Carol returned from the mountain trip, the family group chat flooded with photos. Every picture was of Ethan and Max on trails, holding mugs of cocoa, or sitting beside her at dinner. The captions read things like "My favorite boys and the best trip ever with my 2 little adventurers." Lily's name didn't appear once. Amanda reacted to the post with a heart emoji, but she later sent me a private message saying Lily had asked when Grandma would take her somewhere too. Carol had brushed it off with "we'll see next time," and changed the subject. That week I arranged to meet Carol again. I brought a folder with the notes and photos I'd been keeping. She greeted me with coffee and tried to talk about the trip's highlights, but I placed the folder on the table and told her I wanted her to see something. She skimmed through the pages without speaking until she reached the part showing holiday photos side by side. Ethan's new bike, Lily's small art set, the resort itinerary with Lily's name missing. Carol looked up and said I was twisting things to make her look bad. When I pointed out that even Ryan had confirmed she favored the boys, she tried to deflect, claiming Ryan told her to reward Ethan because he was trying harder in school. I called Ryan while sitting there so there'd be no confusion. He picked up, sounded uneasy, and said he'd never told her that. He even mentioned text messages showing the gifts were her idea. I asked him to forward them, and he did. Carol's face tightened when I showed her the screen. She said we were embarrassing her and accused me of plotting to make her feel guilty. I gathered the papers and said there wasn't any plot, just proof. 2 days later, Ryan sent me a message saying Mom was furious and calling everyone ungrateful. He also admitted he'd known about this pattern for years, but had stayed quiet to avoid conflict. He finally agreed to put it in writing, saying, Mom treats Lily differently. It's obvious. I saved that message in the folder. 3 days after that, Carol stopped by unannounced again. She carried a small gift bag and said she wanted to make things right. Inside was a children's puzzle with missing pieces taped shut on one corner. She gave it to Lily and said maybe next time they'd do something special together. Lily asked if that meant another trip. Carol paused and said maybe, depending on how things went. The conversation ended there. That night, I noticed Carol had changed her profile picture to one from the mountain trip, her sitting between the boys with the caption memories worth every mile. I didn't react. Instead, I called Amanda and asked if she'd noticed anything similar before. She admitted she had, even during family gatherings years ago. Carol always picked activities that excluded Lily somehow.
Excuse me.
Baking days when
This
Lily
better
had
be an
school,
emergency.
toy trips that she learned about afterward.
Patch me up.
Amanda
Doc.
said she'd
What's
stayed
feeling
silent
off?
because she thought Mom would eventually balance
I
it out.
soaked up some
Over the
rads
weekend,
out
I
there.
started calling
Blood
extended
post-
relatives. My aunt mentioned that when we were younger, Carol had been the same way with her nieces and nephews. She favored the boys. Another cousin remembered how she once told people she wasn't good with
Was there
girls.
anything else
By the
bothering
end of those conversations, I had half a dozen similar
No other
stories written down.
complaints?
The following
Take better
Sunday,
care of
Carol
yourself in
hosted
the
her usual
future,
dinner.
okay?
Ryan and Amanda
Hey.
went with their families, and I
offer
decided
a
to
wide
attend too.
variety
I
of
arrived a bit
medical
early and noticed new photo
Could use
frames
some
on her shelf
supplies,
again.
actually.
Ethan in front of a
Let's
waterfall,
see what I can
Max roasting
spare.
marshmallows, both smiling next to her. Lily's framed picture from school had been moved to a corner by the hallway mirror. Carol acted surprised when I mentioned it, saying she just needed room for the new photos. Dinner went on quietly. She talked about how brave the boys had been during the hike, how they climbed without fear, how Ethan helped Max across a bridge. She passed around her phone showing video clips. When Lily leaned over to look, Carol handed the phone to Amanda instead and started talking about the resort's family spa. After dinner, I helped clear the table while Amanda helped Lily wash her hands in the kitchen. Amanda whispered that she was planning to talk to Mom soon because this had gone too far. She didn't want to keep pretending nothing was wrong. A few days later, Carol sent me a long message about how she was tired of being criticized for loving her grandkids differently. She ended it with, "You can't make love equal, Daniel." I didn't answer. I saved it. That weekend, I went through my folder again, organizing everything by date. I included the mountain trip messages, the photos, Ryan's written acknowledgement, and the relative statements. I didn't plan to use it yet, but it was clear that when I did, it wouldn't just be my word against hers anymore. On Monday, Amanda called saying Carol had invited only her and Ryan for a grandkids' lunch next weekend. I told her to go and observe. Afterward, Amanda sent pictures. There were 3 plates set, one for Carol, one for Ethan, one for Max. Lily's seat wasn't even at the table. Amanda said Carol told her it was a boys' bonding day. She sounded tired when she said it. That night, she messaged me, "You're right, it's not in your head." I saved her message too. By then, my folder wasn't just proof, it was a timeline. Each event connected to the next. Every excuse followed by a choice. Carol had been doing this for years, only now there was no way to deny it. And the next time she tried to act like nothing had happened, I was ready to make sure everyone saw exactly what she'd built. A pattern too complete to ignore. After the boys' bonding lunch, Amanda and I agreed that pretending wasn't helping anyone anymore. I suggested we sit
I'll take
down
a
as a
look.
family
Sure.
and put everything out in the open. She agreed, but only if it stayed calm. Ryan was harder to convince, but eventually, he said he'd come if it meant stopping the constant tension. We set a dinner date for Saturday at Amanda's house, neutral ground. Everyone was invited, including Carol. Before the dinner, I sent a short message to the family group chat explaining what the meeting was for, to talk openly about fairness and how it had affected the kids. Carol replied with a single line about how she hoped we weren't planning an intervention. I ignored it. When Saturday came, Amanda had set the dining table simply, with extra chairs pulled in from the kitchen. Carol arrived last, carrying a dessert platter and wearing the kind of smile she used at church events. She greeted everyone warmly and commented on how nice it was that we were finally getting along. Ryan looked tense but stayed quiet. Once everyone sat down, Amanda began by saying this wasn't about blame, just understanding. Carol crossed her arms but nodded. I started by showing printed photos side-by-side comparisons from birthdays, Christmas, and the mountain trip. In each one, Ethan and Max had center spots, while Lily was either missing or pushed to the edge. Carol brushed it off, saying I must have dug through old pictures to find problems. Amanda spoke up and said she'd noticed the same imbalance too. Carol looked surprised. Ryan leaned forward, saying Ethan had once asked him why Grandma liked him better than Lily. That sentence stopped everything. Carol looked stunned, then defensive, claiming she didn't mean it that way, that she simply bonded better with energetic kids. Amanda asked why that bond meant excluding one child from trips and celebrations. Carol replied that she'd just assumed Lily preferred quieter things, like art or reading. I reminded her that she'd made that assumption after deciding the trip wasn't for her. Carol grew irritated, insisting she paid for everything, and that if we wanted things to be even, we could plan and pay ourselves. I said that was exactly what we were going to do moving forward. She froze for a second, then accused me of trying to take control of the family from her. Ryan spoke up again, telling her nobody was taking control. We were just removing the excuses that allowed favoritism to continue. The conversation went in circles for a while, until Carol stood abruptly, saying she didn't have to defend her generosity. She picked up her purse and said she'd host her own dinners from now on for those who appreciated her efforts. Amanda told her to stop turning things around. Carol ignored her and left. After she drove off, the house felt quiet. Ryan looked at me and said that might be the only way to make her see what she'd done. Amanda sighed and said maybe Mom needed time to realize what fair actually meant. We agreed not to contact her for a while and to keep future plans simple and equal. 2 days later, Ryan sent me screenshots of messages from Carol. She had written long paragraphs accusing me of brainwashing my siblings and trying to humiliate her in front of the family. Ryan said he didn't reply. Amanda got a similar message but ignored it too. Later that week, Carol posted photos of old family gatherings online with captions about how children forget everything you've done for them. Several relatives commented, praising her for being a devoted grandmother. Amanda noticed it first and texted me that she was done keeping quiet. She replied directly on the post, writing that Carol's devotion didn't seem to extend to all her grandchildren equally. The comment stayed up for an hour before Carol deleted the post entirely. The following Sunday, I got a call from Ryan. He said Carol had told him she wasn't going to host Christmas this year if people were going to keep accusing her of things. I said that was fine. We could handle it ourselves. Ryan agreed, and Amanda offered to host instead. That marked the first time we'd organized something family-wide without Carol's direction. When I told Lily about Christmas plans, she asked if Grandma would be there. I said maybe not this time, and she just nodded, more curious than upset. I realized she was getting used to the distance already. A few days before Christmas, Carol dropped off gifts at Amanda's house. She left them on the porch without ringing the bell. When we opened them later, Ethan and Max got new gadgets, and Lily got a plain sweater. Amanda raised an eyebrow and said, "At least she's consistent." We didn't return the gifts. Instead, Amanda took the tags off Lily's and packed it with the others, so it wouldn't stand out. The evening went smoothly, laughter, matching pajamas, the cousins playing together without any tension. Nobody mentioned Carol once. After the holidays, Ryan told me Carol had announced she was done trying and that she'd see who reached out first. Nobody did. For the first time in years, family events happened without someone controlling every detail. By the end of that winter, it became obvious Carol's silence wasn't punishment anymore, it was relief. The dinners were calmer, the cousins spent time together naturally, and no one had to tiptoe around anyone's feelings. Carol's absence didn't cause chaos. It showed us how much of it she had been creating all along. For a few weeks after Christmas, things stayed quiet. Carol didn't reach out, and nobody felt pressured to fix it. Then she started making small attempts to reinsert herself, sending forwarded jokes to the family chat, commenting on old pictures of the kids, and tagging Ethan and Max in every post that mentioned family traditions. Lily's name never appeared. I didn't respond, and neither did Amanda or Ryan. A week before Halloween, Carol created a new group message with just me, Ryan, and Amanda. She announced she was taking the boys' costume shopping, calling it a yearly tradition. Lily's name wasn't mentioned again. Amanda replied first, asking if Lily was included. Carol sent a short message saying she assumed Lily already had plans with me. I wrote back that we'd already picked a costume anyway, and left it there. That same evening, Carol called Ryan privately to complain that I was turning Lily against her. Ryan told me later that he told her she couldn't claim exclusion when she never invited Lily in the first place. 2 days later, Carol dropped off candy bags at my doorstep for the kids. There were 2 labeled with Ethan and Max's names and 1 with Lily's name written in smaller letters on a plain paper bag. I took a picture of it before putting it away with the rest of the evidence. It wasn't about the candy, it was the pattern repeating itself, dressed up as generosity. When Halloween arrived, Amanda hosted a small party at her house. All the cousins were there, running around in costumes, laughing together. Carol wasn't invited, and for the first time, the kids didn't ask about her. Ryan helped hang decorations, and the evening ran smoothly. Amanda later joked that Mom would probably post about missing family unity by morning. She wasn't wrong. The next day, Carol uploaded a photo collage from old holidays, writing about how families fall apart when people let resentment win. Several relatives commented supportive things, unaware of the real situation. Amanda ignored it. A week later, Carol sent a message saying she wanted to make peace and invited everyone to her house for pizza night. The message came an hour before she wanted people to show up. Ryan declined immediately, and Amanda didn't respond. I sent a polite reply saying Lily already had bedtime plans. The next day, Carol told relatives that I had refused her olive branch. Amanda stepped in again, replying in the family group chat that the invitation had come too late for anyone to realistically attend. Carol deleted the thread soon after. November rolled around, and the family started discussing Thanksgiving plans. Normally, Carol hosted, but this time no one mentioned it. I offered to handle it instead, proposing a simple dinner where everyone brought a dish. Ryan agreed right away. Amanda said it was about time we all shared the load. A few days later, Carol called Amanda in tears, saying we were shutting her out of her own family. Amanda didn't entertain the guilt trip. She told her calmly that anyone could join as long as it was fair. Carol didn't confirm whether she'd attend. Thanksgiving came, and we kept it easy. No matching table settings, no formal speeches, just a normal meal where everyone pitched in. The kids played in the backyard while the adults talked. There was no tension, no walking on eggshells, just conversation. Midway through dinner, Ryan checked his phone and quietly showed me a post Carol had made, a photo of her empty dining table with the caption, "Some traditions fade faster than love." We didn't respond. A few days after that, Carol sent me a long message filled with half apologies and justifications. She claimed she never meant to hurt anyone, but also said she couldn't pretend everyone had the same personality. I answered once, saying equal treatment wasn't optional, and that the only way forward was for her to include everyone or nothing. She didn't reply. By December, Ryan suggested we start a sibling group chat for planning family events ourselves. The idea caught on quickly. We decided to plan a winter weekend trip for our families only. Same cabins, equal costs, shared responsibilities. No one mentioned inviting Carol. When she eventually found out through Amanda's husband, she called me, accusing me of dividing the family. I told her she was welcome to join if she could treat all the grandkids equally. She hung up without another word. We went on that trip just before New Year's. 3 small cabins, identical in size, with a shared bonfire area between them. The kids built snowmen together, cooked marshmallows, and watched movies in matching pajamas. Nobody compared gifts or counted attention. The weekend ran smoother than any family trip we'd ever had. When we returned, Carol started sending small comments again. Pictures of herself with Ethan and Max, captions about cherished memories, and quotes about how some people hold grudges longer than others love. Amanda started correcting her publicly in gentle ways, pointing out the missing context whenever Carol tried to rewrite events. Ryan stayed quiet but liked every correction. The more Carol tried to manage her image, the clearer her intentions became. It wasn't about family, not really. It was about control. The difference now was that nobody was playing along. The siblings coordinated everything directly, the cousins saw each other regularly, and the only thing missing was the drama. Carol's silence after that became less like punishment and more like peace. By the time the new year started, the shift was complete. There were no more last-minute invitations, no more guilt messages, and no more explanations. Family events happened on equal ground, planned by those who wanted fairness, not credit. Carol's absence stopped feeling strange. It started feeling normal. By the time spring arrived, the new balance had started to feel permanent. Ryan and Amanda handled plans together, every event discussed openly between us before anything was finalized. There were no secret invitations, no sudden announcements, and no uneven treatment. Lily had begun to relax again, playing freely with her cousins without looking for signs of unfairness. Carol, however, wasn't comfortable being left out of control for long. It started with small things. She sent messages to relatives saying she was worried the kids were drifting apart because certain people had taken over planning. Then, she began calling around asking if anyone thought it was wrong that she wasn't being included. Amanda's husband heard about one of these calls and told her. Amanda told me later that Carol had been asking if she should host something big to bring everyone back together. 2 weeks later, Carol announced her plan, a spring family brunch. She sent the invite to everyone except me. Ryan forwarded it to me with a note saying it must have been an oversight, but I told her not to fix it. It was better to let Carol decide where she stood. When the day came, she posted pictures online of herself with Ethan and Max at the restaurant. The captions read, "The tradition continues." Amanda didn't attend, and neither did Ryan. A few days after that, Carol called Amanda to say she felt cut off from her family. Amanda told her directly that the door was open if she could treat everyone fairly. Carol claimed she didn't know what that meant anymore. The call ended with her promising to reflect. The next week, she showed up at Lily's school pickup without warning. She told her teacher she was there to surprise her granddaughter. When I arrived, the teacher mentioned it politely, not realizing I hadn't known. Lily came out holding a cupcake box Carol had brought. I walked Carol to her car and told her not to come to the school again without notice. She smiled, pretending everything was fine, and drove off. Later that evening, Carol sent me a long message about how I was pushing family away. I didn't answer. I saved the message in the same folder I'd been updating for over a year. The next weekend, she organized another event, a barbecue at her house. This time, she invited everyone at once, including me and Lily. Her message said she wanted a fresh start. I asked Ryan and Amanda what they thought. Ryan said he'd go just to see what she was planning. Amanda agreed, but only if things stayed civil. We arrived at Carol's house the following Saturday afternoon. The backyard looked perfectly arranged, just like her old gatherings. Matching tablecloths, new decorations, and gift bags lined up by the porch. Carol greeted everyone warmly and handed out lemonade. For a few hours, everything looked calm. Then the pattern returned. When it was time for the kids to open the gift bags, Ethan and Max pulled out toys and candy. Lily's bag had a small notebook and a pack of colored pencils. Carol smiled at her and said it was for her art. Lily thanked her politely and went to play with the others. Ryan caught my eye across the yard. He didn't say anything, but I could tell he'd seen it too. Amanda quietly gathered her kids and said she had to leave early. Ryan followed soon after. I stayed only long enough to help Lily pack her things, then we left. Carol waved from the porch, acting like nothing unusual had happened. The next morning, Amanda sent screenshots of a new post Carol had made, pictures from the barbecue with a caption about family healing and forgiveness. The photos showed everyone except Lily. Amanda commented directly beneath the post, asking why Lily wasn't in any of the pictures. Within an hour, Carol deleted the post again. That same day, Ryan messaged that mom had called him in tears, saying Amanda was humiliating her publicly. Ryan told her he was tired of pretending she wasn't doing this on purpose. He told me afterward that mom hung up without another word. A week later, Carol sent a group text saying she needed space and wouldn't be contacting anyone for a while. No one replied. Months passed quietly. Lily started piano lessons. Amanda and I alternated hosting small dinners. Ryan took the kids on weekend hikes. Carol stayed silent the entire time. Then, in late summer, she mailed a box to me. Inside were photos, prints from old gatherings, along with a note that read, "I miss what we used to be." The photos were all of the boys again. Not a single one included Lily. I placed the note back in the box, sealed it, and stored it in the closet with the rest of the documentation. That fall, we planned a new family trip. The same cabins we'd rented last winter. We booked everything together, equal expenses, identical rooms. Carol wasn't mentioned, and no one brought her up. The cousins played together as if nothing was missing. They built sandcastles, shared snacks, and stayed up late watching movies. When we returned home, there were no guilt messages, no dramatic calls, and no edited posts online. The quiet held steady, and this time it didn't feel temporary. It felt like what family was supposed to be when everyone finally stopped pretending. By winter, the silence had settled in for good. Carol hadn't called in months, and no one tried to bridge the distance. Family gatherings ran smoothly, the kids played without tension, and the conversation stayed light. Then one morning, a letter arrived in my mailbox. It was written in Carol's handwriting and addressed to all three of us, me, Ryan, and Amanda. Inside was a printed copy of an email she said she had shared with close relatives for context. It listed everything she had done for the family, from paying for trips to hosting holidays, ending with a line that said, "It's hard being misunderstood by your own children." I scanned it once, and then forwarded it to my siblings. Amanda called immediately, annoyed that Mom was still rewriting events instead of acknowledging what happened. Ryan sighed and said relatives had started reaching out, asking what the family disagreement was about. Carol's email had gone wider than we thought. We decided to reply as one group instead of separately. I drafted an email attaching every piece of evidence I had kept: photos, messages, screenshots, receipts. I didn't add any commentary, only a simple introduction explaining that the attachment spoke for itself. Ryan and Amanda reviewed it, added their confirmation, and we sent it to Carol and the relatives she had contacted. The responses came quickly. One aunt called Amanda to say she had no idea how deep the favoritism ran. A cousin replied with a short note of support. No one took Carol's side publicly. 2 days later, Carol sent a message saying she couldn't believe we would air family matters like this. I replied once, explaining that the truth wasn't being aired, it was being corrected. She didn't respond after that. The next weekend, Ryan invited me and Amanda to his house. We sat around the table going over how to handle things moving forward. Ryan said Ethan had started asking why Grandma didn't visit anymore. Amanda said Max had stopped bringing her up completely. Lily, meanwhile, had begun mentioning Grandma in the past tense, as if she was someone who used to be around. None of us corrected the kids. Later that week, Carol posted another update online, this time with quotes about children who forget who raised them. The relatives who had seen the evidence didn't engage. The post stayed up for a day, got no comments, and then disappeared. That silence was louder than anything she could have written. After that, we decided to take control completely. We created a shared email thread labeled Family Planning, where we listed birthdays, school events, and holidays. Everyone contributed equally. Carol wasn't included. Every outing, trip, and dinner was planned that way, and the system worked. In March, Carol sent me a short message saying she wanted to see Lily. She promised it wouldn't be about the past. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I asked Lily if she wanted to see her grandmother. She said maybe, but only if Grandma remembered her birthday this time. I told her I'd think about it and left it at that. 2 days later, Carol showed up unannounced at my house with a small box. She said she had gifts for all the grandkids. I asked her to wait at the porch while I called Amanda and Ryan. They both said not to let her in unless she agreed to talk home. I stepped outside and asked her what the visit was about. She handed me the box and said it was just a gesture. I opened it after she left. Inside were small trinkets for Ethan and Max, and for Lily, a plain bookmark with her name written in marker. I took a photo of everything and sent it to Ryan and Amanda. None of us replied to Carol again. The following week, she sent another message saying we had turned Lily against her. I archived it with the rest. A month later, Amanda hosted a family dinner again. It was the first one with extended relatives since everything happened. People showed up curious but respectful. The conversation eventually turned toward the changes. An uncle asked how things had been since Carol stepped back. Amanda just said, "Peaceful." Ryan nodded and that was it. Nobody pushed further. After dinner, Ryan told me Carol had sent him another message earlier that day, asking if there was still room for her at the table. He didn't answer. He said he didn't want to go backward again. The next morning, I received an email from Carol. It was long but not angry. She said she was tired, that maybe she hadn't realized how her behavior looked from the outside, and that she didn't want things to end like this. I read it twice and then forwarded it to Amanda and Ryan. We decided not to reply immediately. Instead, we agreed on one rule going forward. Any contact with Carol would be shared and open between us. No more private calls or isolated messages. If she truly wanted to rebuild, it had to happen where everyone could see it. That rule stayed. Over the following weeks, Carol sent small updates about her garden, her health, and neighborhood news, always in group messages. There were no emotional paragraphs, no guilt lines, just simple updates. It wasn't closeness, but it was steady. By early summer, something strange happened. Peace didn't feel temporary anymore. The family calendar filled with plans, birthdays, and shared photos. Carol's name stayed out of most of them, and that seemed to work for everyone. No one was angry, no one was defending anyone. The distance, once tense, had turned into structure, and in that quiet, the family finally felt whole again, even with one part of it still standing just outside the circle. By the end of summer, the family had found a rhythm that finally worked. Ryan and Amanda continued planning events through the shared calendar, and everyone showed up without hesitation. Birthdays, small barbecues, even school recitals, everything ran like clockwork. No last-minute chaos, no hidden invites, and no tension hanging in the air. The cousins grew closer than ever, and Lily had stopped asking about Grandma altogether. Then one afternoon in early fall, a handwritten letter arrived in my mailbox. It was from Carol. The envelope was thick, and the writing on the front looked shaky. Inside was a folded note and a smaller one addressed to Lily. The main letter said she had had time to think and wanted to see her granddaughter again. She wrote that she realized things had gotten out of hand, but never used the word apology. The note for Lily said she had missed watching her grow. I called Ryan and Amanda and we agreed to talk before making any decisions. We met that weekend at Ryan's house. Ryan read the letter twice, then said it sounded like half regret, half excuse. Amanda thought it might be a start, but didn't want Lily involved until Carol understood what fairness actually looked like. I decided to show Lily the smaller note and let her decide for herself. When I handed it to her, she read it quietly. She asked if Grandma would treat everyone the same this time. I told her that was up to Grandma. After a long pause, Lily said she wanted to meet her, but only if I came too. We agreed to meet in a public place. A week later, we met Carol at a small cafe in town. She looked older, nervous, and careful with her words. She brought a scrapbook labeled Our Memories. The pages were filled with printed photos, almost all of Ethan and Max. Lily flipped through them without saying much. When she reached the last page, she pointed out that she wasn't in most of them. Carol looked at her and said she didn't realize until now how bad that looked. Lily just nodded and said softly, "Then maybe you can start new pictures." For the first time, Carol didn't defend herself. She apologized directly to Lily and said she hoped they could start small. I stayed quiet and let the moment happen. After they finished talking, Lily gave her a drawing she had made of all the cousins together. Carol folded it neatly into her bag. The meeting lasted less than an hour. When it ended, Carol asked if we could all get lunch together sometime soon. I told her to talk to Ryan and Amanda about it so everyone was involved. She agreed. We left without setting a date, but the tension that usually followed her interactions wasn't there. A few days later, Carol sent a group message thanking everyone for allowing a fresh start. Amanda replied politely, saying that actions mattered more than promises. Carol didn't argue, just sent a heart emoji and nothing else. Over the next few months, she stayed quiet. Instead of trying to host events, she began showing up at the ones already planned, but only when invited. At Amanda's fall festival party, she arrived with small identical gifts for all 3 grandchildren. Each one got the same puzzle set. It was simple, but it stood out because it was finally even. Ryan noticed the change first. He said Mom had started asking about Lily more often, not in a performative way, but casually the same way she asked about Ethan and Max. When the holidays came around, she asked if she could bring dessert to the sibling-organized dinner. Amanda told her she could, as long as it was just dessert, not control. Carol laughed and agreed. She showed up on time with a homemade pie and didn't try to run anything. That night, for the first time in years, the whole family sat together without any strange pauses or side glances. The kids played in the living room while the adults talked in the kitchen. Carol stayed quiet most of the evening, but when she left, she hugged everyone, even Lily. After the holidays, life returned to its steady rhythm. Carol still wasn't deeply involved in planning, and no one expected her to be. She stopped posting about family online. The relatives who had once taken sides now treated everything as normal again. The arguments that used to define our gatherings had disappeared completely. By spring, we had established new traditions. The siblings rotated hosting duties, and Carol attended only when she chose to. There were no guilt trips, no emotional appeals, just a mutual understanding of where everyone stood. Lily continued to spend time with her cousins, and sometimes Carol joined for short visits, never overstaying. One afternoon, while helping Lily with a school project about family, she asked if she could include Grandma in it. She drew a family tree and placed Carol's name beside everyone else's. When I asked her why she wanted to include her, Lily said, "Because now she acts like part of the family again." That small moment summed everything up. Things hadn't gone back to how they used to be, but they had found a balance, one built on structure instead of guilt. Over time, Carol stopped trying to lead and started learning how to belong. And without anyone forcing it, the family finally became what it should have been all along: fair, simple, and calm. My wife dumped me after I drained $60,000 of my savings on her medical bills so she could live her best life. My own daughter took her side. What I did next made them regret it badly. Sup, Reddit. Imagine you wipe out $60,000 of your savings keeping your wife alive, and as soon as she can walk again, she decides you're just background noise in her new life and wants out. Now add your 19-year-old daughter calling you selfish for not supporting it, and you'll understand why I made sure they both regretted every move after that. I, 47 male, married my wife Marla, 46 female, for 23 years. We have 2 kids, a life that wasn't perfect, but was ours. We met in our early 20s, got married young, did the whole building a life together thing. Our daughter Brielle turned 19 last spring. Son Camden just turned 17. Normal family stuff. Weekend barbecues, helping with homework, arguing about whose turn it was to take out the trash. Marla was a nurse at the county hospital until she went part-time when the kids were little, then eventually stopped working altogether about 8 years back. Said she wanted to focus on the home, on the kids. I didn't fight it. We were doing fine on my income, and honestly, having her handle everything at home made my life easier. Then Marla drove her car into a concrete barrier at 60 miles an hour. It was a Tuesday afternoon. She was heading to some yoga class she'd started going to, except she never made it. The call came from the hospital where she used to work. One of her old co-workers recognized her when they brought her in. Multiple injuries, emergency surgery, the works. I grabbed my keys and broke every speed limit getting there. The surgeon told me she was lucky. Lucky. She had a shattered pelvis, broken ribs, internal bleeding, head trauma. But she was alive, and she'd probably walk again with enough physical therapy. Probably. That word hung in the air like a threat. I called the kids. Brielle drove home from college. Camden left school early. We sat in that hospital waiting room for hours, then days, watching machines breathe for Marla, while doctors threw around words like critical and touch and go. She woke up after 5 days, confused, in pain, but awake. The relief nearly knocked me over. I sat by her bed holding her hand, telling her everything was going to be okay. We'd get through this. The kids were here. We were all here. The hospital bills started arriving while Marla was still in the ICU. Insurance covered some of it, but we had that high deductible plan because it was cheaper monthly, and we'd never needed it for anything serious before. Turns out serious comes with a price tag that'll make you physically ill. $15,000 for the ambulance and ER, $32,000 for the first surgery, another $20,000 for the second. ICU costs stacking up by the day. Then rehab, physical therapy, medications, follow-up appointments. The numbers just kept climbing. I paid everything. Took out a loan against my 401k. Drained our regular savings. Maxed out 2 credit cards. Didn't even hesitate. She was my wife, mother of my kids. You don't think about money when someone you love is fighting to walk again? Marla spent 3 weeks in the hospital, then came home. I took family leave from work to be there full time, helped her to the bathroom, cooked her meals, managed her medications, drove her to every single physical therapy appointment. Brielle came home on weekends to help out. Camden was there every day after school. For the first month, Marla was grateful, thanked me constantly, said she didn't know what she'd do without me. The physical therapy was brutal. By week 6, she could walk around the house without help. By week 8, she was almost back to normal. That's when things started shifting. She got quieter, started spending hours on her phone, texting people. When I asked who, she said it was her support group for accident survivors. Made sense. Trauma bonding or whatever. I didn't push it. She started going out again. Doctor's appointments at first, which was normal. Then coffee with friends. Then longer trips. Said she was meeting other people from the support group. That talking to people who understood helped her process everything. I encouraged it. The kids were back to their routines. Brielle at college, Camden finishing junior year. I went back to work, started chipping away at the debt. But she was different. Distant. Cold in ways that felt deliberate. We'd been married 23 years. I knew her moods, knew when something was off. This wasn't just trauma or recovery fatigue. This was something else. I tried talking to her about it. She brushed me off, said I was imagining things, that she was just tired. 3 months after the accident, she could do everything on her own. A miracle, they said. Given how bad the crash was, she should have been dead or permanently disabled. Instead, she was fine. And the second she was fine, she stopped needing me, stopped thanking me for anything, stopped touching me, stopped looking at me like I was her husband, and started looking at me like I was some annoying roommate she was stuck with. I'd come home from work, and she'd barely acknowledge I was there. I'd try to talk about our day, and she'd give me one-word answers while scrolling through her phone. Something was coming. I could feel it building. That pressure in the air before a storm hits, when everything goes still and wrong. 4 months after the accident, Marla called a family meeting, said she needed to talk to all of us about something important. It was a Saturday afternoon. Brielle was home for the weekend. Camden was in his room playing video games. Marla told me to get him, that we all needed to sit down together. I thought maybe she'd gotten bad news from her doctor, some delayed complication from the crash, or maybe financial stuff. She knew how much debt we were in because of her medical bills. We sat in the living room. Me, Marla, Brielle, Camden. Marla looked calm, too calm. That put me on edge immediately. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the accident, she started. About my life, about what I want, about what I've been missing out on. I waited. The kids looked confused. The crash made me realize something. I almost died, and when I was lying in that hospital bed, recovering, I started thinking about all the experiences I never had, all the things I gave up when I got married so young. Oh no, I want a divorce. The words hit like a slap. Brielle gasped. Camden's head snapped up from his phone. I just sat there, trying to process what I'd just heard. What? I managed. Marla looked at me like I was interrupting her. I want a divorce. I can take care of myself now. I'm recovered. And I've realized that I don't want to waste any more time in a marriage that doesn't fulfill me. Waste time? My voice came out wrong. Too high. Marla, what are you talking about? I got married when I was 23. I've only ever been with you. I never got to explore, never got to experience life properly. The accident was a wake-up call. I shouldn't have to settle for this anymore. Settle. That word burned through me like acid. You're saying this in front of the kids? I looked at Brielle and Camden, both of them frozen. You're announcing you want to blow up our family because you feel like you missed out on something? I'm being honest about my needs, Marla said, her voice dismissive. I want to explore, meet new people, see what else is out there. I deserve that much. After I spent everything we had on your recovery, after I took care of you for 4 months, you're telling me you want to leave now that you're better? That's